Don't look yourself up on Google. I'm serious. If you value your peace of mind, don't do it. People say it out of curiosity or vanity or boredom. I did it for the last reason. There was nothing special about that evening. No storm outside, no strange noises, no sense of dread. Just another quiet night, another screen glowing in the dark, another moment where I needed something, anything to distract me from my own thoughts. I typed my name into the search bar without hesitation. It's not a common name. Growing up, I never met anyone who shared it. Teachers always paused when they read it aloud. Strangers asked where it came from. Because of that, I didn't expect much. Maybe an old social profile, a forgotten comment, some irrelevant result that barely matched. I pressed enter and waited. The first result made my stomach tighten in a way I didn't understand at the time. It was a website. The domain contained my full name, first name, last name, all of it. For a moment, I thought it had to be a coincidence, a different spelling, someone else somewhere else. But no, the letters were exact. Perfect. As if they had been copied directly from my own ID. I hovered over the link, suddenly aware of how quiet my apartment was. I told myself I was overreacting. Anyone can buy a domain. Anyone can share a name. I clicked. The page loaded slowly, like it was thinking about whether to let me in. What appeared looked like a forum. A simple layout. A profile picture. A username that matched my name again, word for word. I scrolled, my pulse quickening, and opened the profile. She was my age. She liked the same books, the same movies, the same obscure hobbies I never talked about unless someone asked. There were no real conversations, no obvious replies, just posts scattered like thoughts left behind. It was strange, but not alarming yet. Strange things exist everywhere online. I knew that. Still, something about it bothered me. Not enough to close the page, but enough that I didn't log out either. I left the tab open. Before going to bed, I glanced at it once more. The page hadn't changed. No new posts, no movement. Just a silent imitation of interaction, frozen in place. I told myself I'd forget about it by morning. I was wrong. I tried to forget about the site. For a few days, I succeeded. Work filled my head with deadlines and routine. And by the time I got home each night, I was too tired to think about strange websites or coincidences that probably meant nothing. Still, every so often, the memory surfaced, my name sitting there on the screen, clean and undeniable. A week later, curiosity won. I opened my laptop and typed the address directly this time. I didn't go through Google. I didn't want to see it appear again in the search results like it belonged there. The site was still up. At first glance, nothing had changed. Same layout, same muted colors, same empty feeling, like walking into a room where someone had just been standing. I clicked on the profile again, slower now, paying attention to details I had skimmed over before. The profile described her as a woman in her late 20s. That alone wouldn't have mattered until I realized she was exactly my age. Same birth year, same vague description of work in a field adjacent to mine. Even the tone of her writing felt familiar. Casual, slightly detached, with dry humor tucked between ordinary observations. I told myself this was still within the realm of coincidence. People mirror each other online all the time. Trends exist. Algorithms shape personalities more than we like to admit. But then I noticed the interests section. She listed hobbies I'd never posted about publicly, not on social media, not on forums, not anywhere I could remember. Small things, harmless things, preferences that felt too personal to be copied accidentally. I scrolled through her posts. They were short, fragmented, almost lazy. Long day today, didn't sleep well. Sometimes I wonder if anyone notices. There were usernames beneath the posts, like replies from other people, but none of them linked anywhere. Clicking them did nothing. No profiles. No histories, just names floating under the text, pretending to belong to someone. That was when unease crept in. Forums are noisy places. People argue. They repeat themselves. They overshare. This place didn't do any of that. It felt curated, controlled, like a set built to look lived in but never truly occupied. I checked the timestamps. The posts weren't old. Some were only days apart, recent enough to feel ongoing, active. I glanced at the clock on my wall, suddenly aware of how late it had gotten. The light from my screen reflected faintly in the window, my own face barely visible over the text. For a moment, I imagined someone else seeing it from the other side, watching me read. I closed the tab. That night, I dreamed of typing my name into a search bar that never finished loading. Every time I tried to wake up, the screen refreshed instead. In the morning, I laughed it off. Dreams mean nothing. Websites mean less. Still, before leaving for work, I checked my laptop. The tab was still there, open. I didn't visit the site again for almost a month. Not because I wasn't thinking about it. I was. But because I didn't want to admit how easily it had lodged itself into my routine. Every time I opened my browser, I hesitated. Every idle moment carried the quiet temptation to check, just to see if it was still there. Eventually, I stopped resisting. The site loaded faster this time. At first, I didn't notice what was different. The layout was the same, the colors unchanged. But as I scrolled, I realized there was more content now. New entries, dozens of them. The page felt fuller, heavier somehow, like a notebook that had been written in every day. The posts read less like forum threads and more like diary entries. How did it get this cold so suddenly? I hate how loud the office was today. Sometimes I feel exhausted for no reason. They weren't dramatic. There was nothing supernatural about them. That almost made it worse. I'd seen horror stories online. This wasn't one of them. This was ordinary, mundane, familiar in a way that made my skin prickle. I kept reading. The entries followed a rhythm. Morning thoughts, complaints about work, small observations about strangers on public transport, comments about food, weather, sleep, things people think but rarely bother to document, things I thought. I caught myself nodding along more than once, silently agreeing with sentences written by a woman I had never met. I told myself it was projection, that anyone could relate to vague statements if they wanted to badly enough. But then I reached a post that stopped me. I miss the quiet cafe near my office. They closed it last year. My breath caught. There was a cafe like that near my old job. A small place tucked between two buildings, always half empty, always playing soft music that made it feel separate from the city. It had closed the year before. I hadn't talked about it since. I wasn't even sure I'd mentioned it to anyone. I scrolled faster. Another entry talked about walking home the long way to avoid a crowded street. Another complained about a neighbor's dog barking late at night. Each detail was small, plausible on its own, but together they formed a shape I didn't like. A life that overlapped mine too closely. I checked the dates. The posts lined up with weeks I remembered clearly. Busy weeks, quiet weeks. Weeks where I felt drained without knowing why. It was like watching someone else annotate my own timeline. At some point, I realized I had been reading for over an hour. My apartment felt different now, too still. I glanced toward the door, then the windows, suddenly aware of the distance between myself and the outside world. The site hadn't done anything threatening. It hadn't reached out to me. It simply existed, patient, detailed, observant. Before closing the page, I noticed the newest entry at the top, posted earlier that day. Today felt longer than it should have. So did mine. After that night, I stopped telling myself it was nothing. I still tried to explain it away, habitually, desperately, but the explanations no longer brought comfort. They felt thin, like excuses repeated too many times. The site had crossed an invisible line. It was no longer just relatable. It was specific. I visited it almost every evening after work, pretending I was in control of the habit. I told myself I was gathering evidence, proving to my rational mind that fear had a limit. In reality, I was looking for reassurance and finding the opposite. New entries appeared regularly. One mentioned living in the same city as before, complaining about traffic near downtown. Another talked about a job change, referencing an office building I recognized instantly. The description was vague, but I knew it. I had worked there once, long enough to remember the layout, the elevators that always smelled faintly of metal. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding, and stared at the ceiling. Cities are large, lives intersect. This was still possible. Then I read the post about the car. She had uploaded a photo. Not a clear one, just a partial image taken at night, headlights reflecting off wet pavement. The model was unmistakable. The same car I used to drive in college. Same color, same year. I zoomed in, looking for something that would break the illusion. I didn't find it. The next entry was about lunch. She described a small restaurant near her workplace, praising the soup and complaining about the wait. I knew the place. I had been there the week before. I had complained about the same thing to myself while staring at my phone. My chest felt tight. I scrolled back through older entries, reading them differently now. No longer as harmless observations, but as markers, traces. A pattern forming slowly enough that I hadn't noticed until it was nearly complete. Then came the dogs. She wrote about having two now, but mentioned the first one she'd grown up with. The name jumped off the screen and lodged in my throat. It was the name of my childhood dog. Not a common name, not a trendy one. Something my family had chosen randomly, years ago. I closed the laptop. For several minutes, I sat there, hands clenched in my lap, listening to the hum of my refrigerator. I felt foolish and frightened at the same time. I wanted to laugh, to call someone, to say how ridiculous this was, but I didn't want to explain it out loud. Saying it would make it real. When I opened the laptop again, there was a new post at the top of the page. It was short. Some coincidences stop feeling accidental. I didn't remember when I started shaking, only that I was. I told myself I would stop checking the site. That promise lasted 3 days. By then, it had already become something I measured my time against. I didn't ask if I would look, only when. On the train home, while dinner cooked. Lying in bed with the lights off, the screen dimmed as low as it would go. Each visit felt like pressing on a bruise, half dreading the pain, half needing the confirmation that it was still there. The entries kept coming. What changed was how I read them. At first, I'd checked the site and then gone about my day. Now, I lived my day and checked the site afterward. I began noticing the shift almost immediately, though I didn't admit it to myself until much later. I went to a baseball game with coworkers one evening, a last-minute invitation I almost declined. The crowd was loud, the air smelled like fried food and spilled beer, and for a few hours I managed to forget about the site entirely. That night, I checked it. There was a new entry. Didn't expect to enjoy the game as much as I did. My heart skipped, then laughed at itself. Tens of thousands of people had been there. Of course someone else had gone too. I closed the page, annoyed at my own reaction. But it kept happening. A walk I took through a familiar neighborhood. A day I worked late and came home exhausted. A morning where I woke up already irritated for no clear reason. Each time, the site reflected it back to me, not word for word, but close enough to feel intentional. I started checking timestamps. The posts weren't always written after the events. Sometimes they appeared hours later. Sometimes the next morning. Once or twice, they showed up before I remembered doing the thing at all, like a delayed realization catching up with a written record. That was when fear crept in properly. The site wasn't reacting to me. It was anticipating me. The comments beneath the entries grew more frequent too. Birthday wishes appeared one morning, stacked neatly under a short post about cake and quiet plans. My stomach dropped. It was my birthday. I hadn't mentioned it to anyone at work. I hadn't posted about it anywhere online. I sat on the edge of my bed, laptop balanced on my knees, feeling suddenly exposed. As if something unseen had leaned closer. I scrolled down, my hands cold. One comment stood out among the others. Shorter, simpler. Feels like we know you. I shut the laptop so hard it rattled. That night I slept poorly. Every sound in my apartment felt louder than it should have been. Pipes shifting. A car passing outside. My phone lighting up with notifications that turned out to be nothing. In the morning, I checked the site again. There was a new post waiting. Some days it feels like someone else is reading my thoughts. I stared at the screen, my reflection faint and distorted across the text. For the first time since this began, a clear thought formed in my mind. Cold, steady, unavoidable. This wasn't coincidence anymore. It was attention. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured the site refreshing on its own, new words appearing line by line while I wasn't looking. By morning, fear had hardened into something else. Resolve, maybe, or desperation. I needed clarity. Even bad answers were better than this suspended state of not knowing. If someone was behind the site, I needed to reach them. I opened the page again, forcing myself to slow down, to look at it not as a reader but as a participant. I scanned the layout carefully this time. The posts, the comments, the usernames beneath them. They looked interactive, familiar shapes, familiar rules. I clicked on a comment. Nothing happened. I tried another. Then a username. Then the profile image next to a post. No links, no history, no way in or out, just text pretending to be alive. My breath grew shallow. I searched for a reply button, a text field, anything that would let me type. There was nothing, not hidden, not disabled, simply non-existent. That was when it hit me. This was never a forum. There were no other users, no conversations, no voices overlapping or colliding. Every post, every reply, every birthday wish, all of it came from the same place, from the owner. The realization made my stomach churn. Someone had gone to great lengths to build the illusion of interaction, to make it feel crowded, normal, safe, and all of it had been designed to be watched, not touched. I pushed my chair back and stood up, pacing my apartment. My thoughts raced, colliding with each other. Who would do this, and why me? Had I been chosen, or was I just convenient? I stopped in front of my desk and stared down at the screen again. The newest post had appeared while I wasn't looking. I wonder when she'll try to talk to me. My hands went numb. I read the sentence again, slower this time. It wasn't vague. It wasn't general. It wasn't relatable. It was specific. It was present. I sat back down. If this person, was watching, then silence hadn't protected me. Avoidance hadn't helped. The site had continued regardless, filling in the gaps on its own. Maybe reaching out would break whatever pattern had formed. Maybe it would force a response grounded in reality. I scrolled to the bottom of the page until I found a contact email. The address used my name too. I opened a new message and stared at the empty body for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly. I didn't want to reveal anything. I didn't want to invite conversation. I just wanted proof that this was still human. I typed 3 words. "Hi, it's me." Then, after a pause, I added one more sentence. "We have the same name." I reread it several times. It sounded harmless. Friendly, even. There was no accusation in it. No fear. I didn't press send until I was sure of that. When I finally did, I felt an immediate wave of regret. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I checked my email too often. Every notification made my heart jump. When night came, I didn't open the site again. I couldn't bring myself to. The next morning, the first thing I did was reach for my laptop. The site wouldn't load. I refreshed the page, checked the address, tried again. Nothing. It was gone. For a moment, relief washed over me so strongly my eyes burned. Maybe that was it. Maybe whoever had been behind it panicked. Maybe they'd erased everything and disappeared. Then I opened my email. There was one new message. No subject line, just a single sentence in the body. "I found you." I stared at the email for what felt like an eternity. My hands trembled so violently that I nearly dropped my laptop. One sentence. 4 words, no explanation, no signature, just a declaration: I found you. I couldn't move. My apartment felt impossibly silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears until you hear your own heartbeat echoing like a drum. Every light seemed too dim. Every shadow felt deliberate, as though it were watching me. I reread the email, hoping it was a mistake, an automated reply, a glitch. Maybe someone had just discovered my address at random. Maybe it was spam. But deep in my gut, I knew it wasn't. This was personal. This was precise. This was targeted. I wanted to respond. I wanted to write something clever or polite. Something that would make me seem calm, unafraid, in control. But I couldn't. My fingers hovered over the keys, frozen. I could feel the weight of 1,000 possible outcomes pressing down on me, each one more terrifying than the last. My thoughts raced back to the site, the forum that wasn't a forum, the posts that mirrored my life with uncanny accuracy, the comments pretending to be from strangers, the small, mundane details that no one could have known unless they had lived inside my mind. The coincidences weren't coincidences. They were calculated, intentional, and I had just confirmed that someone or something was watching me. I tried to calm myself. It's just one person who knows my name, my routines, maybe my location, nothing more. But my mind refused to settle. I remembered how the posts sometimes appeared before events happened, as if the other person anticipated my actions. It was no longer a distant observer. It was inside the rhythm of my life. I looked around my apartment. Every familiar object felt charged, suspicious. The coffee mug on the counter, the shoes by the door, my keys on the table. Even the screen of my laptop, glowing faintly, seemed to pulse with intent. I realized I hadn't felt truly alone since the first post months ago. A sudden noise made me jump. A soft knock at the door. I froze. My chest tightened. No one should be here. I told myself it was the wind, a delivery, an overactive imagination. But the timing, impossibly precise, was enough to make my stomach knot. My phone buzzed. A notification. I didn't check it. Couldn't. I thought about every post, every detail I had ignored, every fleeting sense of coincidence I had rationalized away. The baseball game, the cafe, the birthday wishes, the dogs, the car, the long walks. It wasn't accidental. It never had been. I wanted to delete the email, delete my account, delete myself, but I knew it was too late. The message had already landed in my inbox. The connection had been made. There was no erasing it. I wanted to call someone, anyone, to prove I wasn't imagining it. But even as I reached for my phone, I realized it didn't matter. No one would understand. No one could. The specifics of my life were mirrored perfectly, twisted into a reflection I couldn't escape. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen. The words blinked at me like a promise, a warning, a truth I couldn't deny. I found you. I tried to breathe, tried to convince myself I was imagining it, that this was just a cruel prank. But my mind refused. Something real had touched my life, something precise, patient, and unrelenting. And then I understood. This was only the beginning. I was being watched. Always. Every detail of my days had been catalogued, mirrored, predicted. Every quiet moment, every careless thought, every routine step, it was all known. And now the watcher had revealed themselves. I didn't move for hours, not even to turn off the laptop, not even to blink. The silence pressed around me. Outside, the world continued. Inside, I was frozen in a moment I couldn't escape. Finally, I typed a single word into a blank document, not sending it, not sharing it, just to acknowledge it. Here. I closed my eyes and felt the weight of the sentence I had read again, slow and deliberate, reverberating through my body. I found you. And I knew without doubt that there was no turning back. No hiding. No forgetting I was found. And whatever came next, I realized I would never be alone again.